Picture this. You're standing in the middle of a vast, untamed wilderness. No roads, no buildings, no civilization in sight. The air smells like wet earth and smoke. Around you, a group of early humans, dirty, sharp-eyed, and completely focused on survival, are crouching near a fire, tearing apart a freshly hunted deer. Now imagine this. You walk up to one of them and hand over a single dollar bill. He stares at it, sniffs it, turns it over, maybe even tries to bite it. And then, nothing. He tosses it aside like a useless leaf and goes back to his meal, because to him, that piece of paper means absolutely nothing. But here's the real question. Why? What did early humans value instead? And what does that tell us about money, survival, and the way we see the world today? To understand why a dollar bill means nothing to a caveman, you first have to understand what money actually is, and why humans invented it in the first place. Money is not a natural thing. It doesn't grow on trees. It doesn't fall from the sky. Money is a technology, a tool invented by human civilization to solve a very specific problem. That problem? Trade. In the earliest days of human existence, there was no such thing as buying or selling. If you needed something, you either made it yourself, found it in nature, or took it by force. There were no shops, no markets, no prices. But as humans began living in larger groups, small tribes, then villages, then early settlements, a new challenge emerged. People started specializing. One person was better at hunting, another was better at making tools. Someone else knew how to treat wounds with plants. Suddenly, people had things others needed, and they needed things others had. This is where the earliest form of economic thinking was born, not with coins or paper, but with something far older and far more human. The idea of exchange. The idea that what I have and what you have can be traded to make both of us better off. And that instinct, that drive to trade, to negotiate, to assign value, was alive and well long before the first dollar was ever printed. So, if early humans didn't use money, what did they use? The answer is barter. The direct exchange of goods and services without any currency involved. You killed a big animal today and have more meat than you can eat before it rots? Trade the extra meat to your neighbor who spent the day gathering berries and nuts. Both of you win. You're skilled at making sharp stone tools, but terrible at starting fires? Find the person in your tribe who's a fire-starting expert and offer them a blade in exchange for teaching you. This is barter in its purest form. And for tens of thousands of years, it worked. But barter had a fatal flaw, a problem economists today call the double coincidence of wants. For a trade to happen, both people had to want exactly what the other person had at exactly the same time. What if you had extra meat, but your neighbor didn't want meat today? What if the toolmaker wanted berries, but the berry gatherer already had enough tools? The trade falls apart. No deal, no exchange. This created enormous friction in early human communities, and as tribes grew larger, that friction grew worse. The simple system of direct exchange started to break down under its own limitations. Something had to change. And early humans, clever, adaptable, and always looking for better solutions, found a way. Before coins were ever minted, and long before paper currency existed, early humans discovered something powerful. The concept of proto-money. Proto-money refers to objects that communities agreed had value, not because the objects were useful on their own, but because everyone accepted them as a medium of exchange. Some of the earliest known forms of proto-money include shells, particularly cowrie shells, which were used across ancient Africa, South Asia, and China for thousands of years. Smooth, durable, and nearly impossible to fake, cowrie shells became one of the most widespread early currencies in human history. Other communities used animal teeth, rare stones, obsidian blades, or even dried and preserved food as early currency. In some parts of the world, large stone discs, so heavy they could barely be moved, served as a form of stored wealth that entire villages recognized. What made these objects work as proto-money wasn't their physical usefulness. A cowrie shell can't build a shelter. A polished stone can't hunt an animal. Their value was entirely based on shared belief, on collective agreement within a community that this object represents value. And this is the most important lesson hidden inside the history of money. Value is not a property of an object. Value is a story, a shared fiction that humans agree to believe together. The dollar bill in your pocket has no real power on its own. It has power because millions of people agree that it does. Early humans understood this, not in abstract terms, but in the deeply practical reality of daily survival. Now, let's go back to that caveman holding the dollar bill. He doesn't throw it away because he's stupid. He throws it away because within his world, within his tribe, within his system of survival, that piece of paper holds zero shared meaning. No one in his tribe has agreed that this object has value. No story has been built around it. No trust has been established. To him, it is literally just a piece of decorated plant fiber. But here's what's fascinating. Give that same caveman a large, smooth cowrie shell, an object his tribe recognizes as rare and desirable, and watch his entire reaction change. Suddenly, he's interested. Suddenly, there's something to negotiate. Because the shell fits into the story his community already believes. This teaches us something profound about modern money. The US dollar, the euro, the yen, none of these have intrinsic value either. They are valuable because billions of people, governments, and institutions have agreed to believe in them. The moment that agreement breaks down, as it has in countries experiencing hyperinflation, the money becomes worthless almost overnight. The caveman and the Wall Street banker are not so different after all. Both of them are operating inside a shared story about what has value and what doesn't. The difference is just the size of the community telling that story. So how did humanity get from cowrie shells and stone discs to the coins and paper bills we use today? The transition happened gradually, over thousands of years, driven by the growth of trade networks and the rise of early civilizations. Around 5,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, merchants began using small pieces of silver weighed against standard measures to settle debts and make purchases. This was one of the earliest recorded uses of metal as currency. The leap to actual coins, standardized pieces of metal with a fixed weight and a government stamp, happened around 600 BCE in the Kingdom of Lydia, in what is now Western Turkey. For the first time, a central authority was guaranteeing the value of the money. You didn't have to weigh the silver yourself. The king's stamp told you it was trustworthy. This was a revolution. Coins could travel across long distances. They didn't rot like food or break like shells. They were durable, portable, and divisible, all the qualities that make a good currency. Trade exploded. Civilizations expanded. The ancient Greeks, Romans, Persians, and Chinese all developed their own coinage systems, fueling empires built as much on commerce as on conquest. And the psychological shift was just as significant as the practical one. Money was no longer just about exchange. It became a symbol of power, trust, and civilization itself. The face stamped on a coin wasn't just decoration, it was a declaration. This authority is real. This value is guaranteed. This story is worth believing. So, what's the real lesson hiding inside the story of a caveman and a dollar bill? It's this. Money has never been about the object itself. It has always been about trust, community, and the stories we agree to tell each other. Early humans didn't need dollar bills, but they weren't primitive in their thinking about value. They understood trade, reciprocity, and the power of shared agreement just as deeply as any modern economist. The cowrie shell and the dollar bill are separated by thousands of years of human history, but they are built on exactly the same foundation, the collective human decision to believe that something is worth something. And that raises one final, uncomfortable question. If the value of money is just a shared story, what happens when people stop believing the story? History has answered that question many times. Empires have fallen, currencies have collapsed, and every time they do, humans do exactly what their earliest ancestors did. They find something new to believe in, build a new shared story, and start trading again. Because that instinct, to exchange, to cooperate, to assign value, is not a product of civilization. It is what created civilization.